Good evening, everyone. How is everyone doing tonight? Um, just checking in. How are you guys feeling? Um, Spring is upon us. Hoping you're feeling the spring vibes. Um, it's kind of hard to feel it when we're all stuck at home, can't hang out with our friends. This live is brought to you tonight by my mental health. I am Roxanne Francis, and I am a psychotherapist in the General Toronto area of Ontario, Canada. How are you all doing tonight? Let me just post my title here tonight. Tonight we are talking about children's mental health and how that's impacting us all. My title isn't posting. Here we go. Pin comment. Yes, I'm still new to the gram. Hang in there with me. Hey, Jam. Thanks for the big up, Thanks for the support. I appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Come on through. Tonight, this is for the educators. This is for the parents. This is for the people who are taking care of children, people who have children around you. If you love children, if you have children in your life, if you have children in your house, tonight is for you. We are having an in-depth conversation about how to balance children's mental health and COVID. So I'm just going to turn down my tunes here. So let me know in the chat. Do you guys have children around you? Do you have children in your home? Are you educators? I know, Jam, you're an educator. I'd love to hear your chat, your feedback if you stay with us tonight. We are having a special guest tonight. My colleague, her name is Kristen Greco, and she is a psychotherapist also in the GTA. But I'm just going to wait for her to join us, and then we will connect. Kristen, if you're in the house, just hit request to be on this live, and I will see if I can get you in here. So you guys just bear with me because I'm still new to this live business. But anyway, I'm just going to use this moment to big up my friend and I guess my mentor in sorts, Jam Gamble. She's on here. She has a really great program called Slay the Mic. If you are thinking about amplifying your voice and figuring out how to show up in this world and getting used to speaking to an audience, I would hit her up. She's on Instagram here at I am Jam Gamble. Let's see. Jen sent a request to be in my live video, but I'm not sure if that's the right person. Kristen, if that's you, just say that's me, and I will bring you in here. There we are. All right. How do we do that? Let's see. Kristen, if that's on here, we'll see if that's you. It says waiting. We'll see if she joins us. So tonight we're going to, hey, Kristen.
Hi, I'm sorry that took so long.
That's okay.
I'm still getting used to this too, so.
Thanks for joining us. So friends and family, this is Kristen Greco. She is my colleague and friend. She's a psychotherapist, and she is a clinical director of the Newmarket Psychotherapy Team, which is a wonderful collective of therapists. And we get together, and little by little, we're trying to heal our land, right, Kristen?
There's a lot of need out there.
Yes.
As we've seen with the opening of Newmarket Psychotherapy Team, for sure. There's been a lot of clients that have passed through our office, which is a great thing. But it's also concerning to me now that, everybody is, in quarantine and social distancing, and what kind of supports are they getting, especially the children,
right,
that had been seen.
Yeah.
So that's a concern.
You know, so I am a parent. I have two little boys at home, and Kristen's also a parent. She has twin boys and a feisty little girl as well. And I like to say that we're all standing outside, but we're not under the same sun. Some of us are in the shadows. And recently, I've seen another analogy that says we're all in the storm, but we're not in the same boat. And while this pandemic has hit us and hit us hard, our Ministry of Education in Ontario has done, I think, what is responsible. They're trying to find a
Mhm.
way to roll out education to our hundreds of thousands of children who are not in the classroom. But that being said, we're not all in the same home. We don't all have the same resources. We don't all have the same internet connection. We don't all have the same kinds of families. And many of our children have different ways of experiencing the world. Some children have developmental delays, different diagnoses. Some children have anxiety. Some children live with depression. Some children live in homes with lots of conflict. So it's hard for them to access um, or to take in all the education that is being doled out from their homes. I know that as a parent myself, I sometimes have trouble getting my boys to take in all the information that their wonderful teachers are sending out, right? Kristen, I know that you recently wrote a blog on the website, and towards the end, we'll talk to people about how they can reach you. But
Mhm.
can you talk to me about why you thought it was necessary to speak to the situation at home and children receiving education?
Well, I first just want to say that I think that teaching is one of the hardest jobs. And and I've known that, like, we have lots of teachers in my family, my immediate family. So I have always had such a respect for the job that they have to do. But when this happened, you know, they've been asked to do something that's, completely um, in uncharted territory for them.
Hmm.
So they are having to teach young children
Hmm.
who can't necessarily focus and be independent and do a lesson without the facilitation of their parents. And
Right.
so, when this happened and schools shut down for good reason, my first thought was, oh my gosh, how are kids going to, first of all, cope with the grief and the loss
Hmm.
of their friends, their routine, because we know that routine instructor is so important for
Yeah.
them,
Yeah.
right? And how are they going to, being removed from the classroom and the environment that they're used to learning in, how are they going to cope with all of the changes that are happening, and then have to do their regular academic schoolwork on top of that,
Right.
right?
Right.
And how will parents who are not teachers
Right.
facilitate that learning, especially when, there's, like, for my own kids, there's math homework that, or math online schooling that they have to do, but I don't know how to teach it to them in a way that they will understand because I'm not a teacher.
Right.
The other piece is that, from my own experience with my own children, and then speaking to my clients, kids are not okay, right? They're
Hmm.
not okay right now.
Hmm.
Um, we are not okay. I have bad days, right? And so we have to remember that just like us, our children are having bad days too.
Right.
And so when we're having bad days, when we're feeling uncertain about the world and what's happening, it's difficult to focus. It's difficult to do our jobs.
Hmm.
So we need to ensure that our child's mental health is of, is the priority before they can retain information, before we can even go there, before we can even address the school piece, I
Right.
think.
Right. That mental health piece is key. When I was in school, in university, I taught a part-time job, a parenting class, and one of the classes was called Kids Have Stress Too. And the parents, they were flabbergasted. Like, what do kids have to be stressed out about?
Yeah.
But they have stress. Like, if their pencil breaks, listen, my 5-year-old will lose his mind.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a big deal, right? And if he will lose his mind over the breaking of his pencil, imagine not going to school every day, which has been his norm, not seeing his teacher every day, having his day turned upside down, knowing that he can't have a play date with his friends. We can't go here, we can't go there. They're having a hard time understanding, why is everything shutting down? What is coronavirus? Am I going to get sick? So you're right, this is not normal for them. And then on top of that, we are um, giving them schoolwork. Like, this is school, and it isn't. And I'm not trying to say that the children shouldn't be learning,
No.
but we have to recognize that it's just another component on top of the difficult emotions that they're feeling. Why can't we see our friends?
Yeah.
We took we took our son to see a friend of his the other day, and he couldn't, like, he wanted to run up to the front door and hang out with it, but we couldn't. So we stayed in the car. It was hard, right?
Yeah, so I mean, we've done a couple of those. I think you and I talked about that today.
Yeah.
The curbside sort of social distancing visits where, their friends stay on the porch and you sit in the car with the kids and they get to kind of talk to each other and see each other in 3D
Right.
rather than over, FaceTime.
Right.
Um, it's much more nourishing, I think, for
Yes.
them in that way.
Yeah.
And when we talk about the stress that the kids are feeling right now, I think it's important to remember that um, kids are, I think there's this kind of idea that if your kid is misbehaving or if your child's misbehaving and they're acting out, that they're acting bad.
Right.
You know, and I talk about the anger iceberg,
Mm-hmm.
right? For those of you who aren't familiar, anger is a secondary emotion, and just like an iceberg, we only see the tip of it, right? And the majority of what is actually happening is underneath the water, just like an
Right.
iceberg, the
Right.
majority underneath. And so, I often remind myself too, when my kids are, having angry moments during this time, that this is actually not what is really happening.
Right.
So, what is underneath the tip of that anger? And a lot of it is fear,
Right.
uncertainty,
Mm-hmm. Grief.
loneliness, grief,
Mm-hmm.
hopelessness. Um, my daughter, said to me the other day, I don't like this stupid virus. I don't understand why we can't see my friends.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and she's having her moments where she's just experiencing grief and anger. So, adding that to the pile of the other stuff, like the academic piece,
Right.
is not an option for her right now. We just can't get her mind there.
Right.
And so what I think is important for families to know is that whatever it is that you do, whether you're, a parent at home with your child, a parent who's working from home, or a caregiver who is working from home, whether you're a caregiver who is an essential worker, or a frontline worker who needs to be out of the home, I think the most important thing for us to remember is that each day is going to be different.
Mm-hmm.
And what's important is surviving right now, because when we try to thrive during times of crisis,
Mm-hmm.
there is disappointment. We have, disillusionment, because there's no way to do that.
Right. Right. You know, I wonder if you could speak to uh, the children uh, excelling or doing well. You know, we want our children to do well. We want them to receive that education. How do we know when is too far to push them?
So I think that, I think you have to think about before,
Hmm.
before all of this, before the pandemic. And what was that like for your child? What was it like for your child in the quote unquote normal, um, routine of life before all this happened? Were there power struggles with homework? Were they interested in doing homework? Were they interested in school? And I think if you see a drastic behavior change, right?
Right.
So all of a sudden they're not interested, or they're having meltdowns, and
Right.
they're not wanting to do schoolwork.
Hmm.
If there's a real behavioral change in the way that they're responding to you trying to get them to do the work, then
Hmm.
that's where there's a red flag, and that's where we kind of have to say, okay, what's going on? Let's talk to the child. Let's try to figure out, what's happening. And sometimes they don't even know themselves
Hmm.
what's happening. Um, some kids are having anxiety symptoms, and they
Yeah.
don't know. They can't connect the two, right? So um, my kids have said, "Mommy, I don't feel well," or
Right.
"Mommy, I have a pain in my leg." Um, and it's more about just them not feeling secure and them not feeling
Hmm.
safe
Hmm.
because they're not understanding what's going on. And so
Right.
we have to understand that unlike us, or most of us, they can't sometimes connect why they're feeling so emotional or upset or dysregulated. And it's our job to do that and to help
Hmm.
them do that for them.
Sometimes we can't even figure it out, right?
Exactly. That was what was
Grumpy, and
going
we're not,
through my mind. Yeah.
it
Yeah.
takes a lot of, sometimes it takes reflection, like what's really going on for me here. And
Yeah.
kids don't know how to do that, right? But signs like that, like tummy aches, headaches out of nowhere, if you've eliminated everything else, if they are not hungry, they aren't tired, they weren't spending hours in front of the screen, that's another topic. But if you've eliminated everything else and they have this tummy ache out of nowhere, or they've gotten this, they're angry out of nowhere, they've gotten this headache out of nowhere, they can't sleep, these are times when we need to sit with them and talk about things. I remember sharing with you, I'll share with the audience as well, that a few weeks ago, my son was going to bed and he has a favorite stuffy that he sleeps with. And he said to me one night, was tucked in, we did our stories and everything. He was getting ready for bed, lights were out, only the night light was on. And as I kissed him goodnight, he said to me, Mommy, I think he feels so hot. And I said, Oh, how does he feel hot? And he said, I think he has a fever. And I said, Oh, what should we do with that? And he said, maybe we should take him to the stuffy hospital. And I
Mhm.
said, well, it's pretty late. I think the stuffy hospital is closed right now.
Right.
Then he was quiet and I just sat with him for a couple of seconds. And then very, very quietly, he said to me, do you think he has a coronavirus?
Aw, yeah.
And I said, I don't know. What do you think? And then he forgot about the stuffy and he said, what if we get it?
Mm.
Will one of us die? And it just made me recognize that this is something that's been on his mind. Like it didn't just come up in a second, right?
Mhm.
And so these are the things that they're worried about, right? Are we watching the news 24/7? Are they, and to be honest with you, whether or not we're watching the news 24/7, they're hearing about it, right?
Yeah. They're hearing about it from their friends
They were
on
hearing about it before
FaceTime.
break.
Yeah. So, and they're hearing about, the adults around them talking about it. They're hearing about the other stresses that, as their caregivers and or parents talk about, and we don't even realize that they're picking up on the fragments of conversations that we're having
Right.
in their and their minds and with their imaginations, they're taking pieces of that and creating sort of this idea about what's happening, and sometimes that's worse than what is actually happening. And so I think that's why it's so important to, constantly or continuously, like daily or, every other day, sort of check in with your child and say, how was your day? Did you have a
Right.
good day?
Right.
What was a good thing about your day? What was a not so good thing about your day?
Right.
And I think talking about the fact that this is not a normal time,
Mm-hmm.
so it's not going to be like this forever, but it's not a normal time. And
Right.
it's hard for
Right.
everybody. It's hard for their teachers, it's hard for mummies and daddies, it's hard for grandparents, and that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
And that's okay. So normalizing it a little bit for them, I think, is really
Yes.
important.
Yes. So I wanted to touch on work from home, right? Unfortunately, many people have
Mm.
been laid off, and it's a difficult financial situation, which brings its own stressors in the home. But what about the parents who are lucky enough to still have their jobs and they are working from home? How do parents balance working from home, doing the conference call, doing the Zoom call, and still having to deliver this online education, make lunch, make snacks, give them activity outside? How do we manage all of that?
Well, I think that it's unmanageable.
Right.
There is no way to manage this. I think that because we are in such uncertain times,
Hmm.
we need to be really trying hard to be in the moment with ourselves
Right.
and with our children and with our families.
Hmm.
And I don't think that we can set expectations. And that
Right.
sort of brings me back to like surviving before we even try to
Thrive.
thrive.
Hmm.
I think it's really a good idea to kind of, you know, create structure for your child during the day, but flexible and loose, and taking into consideration that you and your child are going to have bad days.
Hmm.
And so sometimes you can kind of not follow the schedule,
Hmm.
right? And you have to do, I think, what is best for you and your child on that particular day.
Hmm. You know,
So,
I
sorry.
want at the just
Mhm.
when this all started, when the online education system was being rolled out, I saw a lot of flurry activity online around schedules, right? 7:30 to 8:30 this, 8:30 to 9:30 that, recess, 11 o'clock to. Is that sustainable?
Well, it's not for me. It's not for me or it hasn't been for my husband and I. And we have made a decision at this point, because what we were noticing was, my husband's a bit more flexible at home, and so he was able to do more of the online schooling with the kids, but realized that, he couldn't get them engaged.
Hmm.
So you know, we've sort of lowered our expectations,
Right.
um, and that has lifted a huge weight
Hmm.
off of our shoulders.
Hmm.
And we did connect with the kids' teachers and the administration, and I did say that right now we are focusing on mental health, and we're going to do what we can in terms of the schooling piece. But I'm confident that if we ensure their mental wellness,
Hmm.
we ensure that they are happy,
Hmm.
that they will come around and be more sort of willing to engage and more willing um, to sit down and retain information.
Right.
And they also will get to a point where, you know, like I said, this is not the norm. When things eventually get back to a semi-normal or whatever that looks like, most kids are going to be in the same situation. Right?
Yes.
So
Yeah.
there are children at home who, I have laid awake at night thinking about this, and kids at home who are not in safe environments, who are in, situations that are where they're not getting their survival needs met.
Yes. Yep.
And so I think that at some point, the longer this goes on for,
Mm-hmm.
the ministry is going to have to think of some way to modify the curriculum
Mm-hmm.
to help children catch up, because I don't think parents can be the teachers. I don't think so.
Just last week I was talking to a set of parents around just advocating for their child and recognize this is where knowing your child, knowing their educational capacity and emotional capacity, that's where this comes into play. Because I was talking to them around what the expectation is for their child. They were saying, school was doling out all of this stuff, and their daughter was having a hard time emotionally at home. And so she was having a hard time wrapping her mind around this academically. And so I encouraged them to have a conversation with the child's classroom teacher just around, okay, what are the expectations here? And what are the deliverables? And then just really have a realistic look at, given her situation, what are we actually able to respond to in terms of these deliverables? If the deliverable is that I need these 3 things answered by end of day, we need to really look, can she do these 3 things or can she do one? Right? Do you need to tell because the daughter she was becoming unglued. I had to have a really serious talk with the parents and say, you need to have a discussion with the teacher and say, okay, does this mean that we're only going to log on to online school every other day? Or does this mean that we're not going to be present on a Friday or on a Monday? Because there's no point in pushing her and pushing her and pushing her. And then when school is back up and running, she can't function because she was traumatized over this whole pandemic season.
Yeah, and I think just in sort of piggybacking on what you said there around again, we're setting ourselves up by saying, let's do online schooling every other day, or let's do it, every day except for Friday. I think that having those expectations, again, could set us up for feeling like we've failed if we don't follow through with that. And so I think that that's why being in the moment and being present with your child and really seeing what you can manage on that day, I think is really what we need to be focusing on right now, because every day is so different, right? And we don't want children going back to school with a whole bunch of different mental health needs that can't be met by the school board.
Exactly.
I do have to say, though, that when I did reach out to my children's teachers and said that, we would do our best at home, but we're 2 full-time working parents, and, we don't have time to first of all, learn whatever it is that we have to teach them, get our children engaged, facilitate a lesson. With 3 kids for us, that would mean half of a day. Doing that. Yeah. And so, our mental wellness and our cohesiveness as a family is top priority. And the school was so supportive of that. They were so understanding.
Good. I'm glad.
I think that, their feedback to us was that, they were very glad to hear that we were making that a priority. And I think that really a lot of this online, learning, the teachers they're working so hard.
Yes.
But it's also, that they've also never done this before. So a lot of what is going to be coming back from the parents and back from the kids is going to inform the Ministry of
Right,
Education.
right. And I think it's really important to, um, if you feel it's necessary, to reach out to the child's educator, because, and many of them are very reasonable, but each home is different and each child is different. I had a conversation with my older boy's teacher on Monday, and just around the work that he's doing and what we're engaging in and what we might be pulling back from. And she actually said, she thanked me for the feedback just around his performance and his work, because she said there's some families, when they dole out the work, there's some families who will say, this is not enough, we need more.
Yeah.
Some parents will say, it's too much, we're drowning.
Yeah.
And some are saying we're pulling out altogether. So you really have to assess your own individual family
Absolutely.
and what those needs are, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I really want to be clear in that I'm not saying that online schooling shouldn't happen, but I think that because I think that for some it's working.
Mm-hmm.
For many it's not from what I've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And from those that I've spoken to, including, some of my clients. So, I think that, as I said, you really need to look at your own family situation.
Right.
And follow your instinct and trust what it's saying.
Mm-hmm.
Your child is going to catch up. And, one of the things that I said to my husband the other day was that our children are learning something,
yes,
right now that we have never learned in our lives.
Yes.
They're learning how to cope in ways that, that we've never had to.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's a whole different kind of learning.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll give them, it's like, I talked about this morning. There's a really good book out there by Anna Gomez.
Yes.
And she wrote it for kids during the coronavirus, and it's called The Butterfly, the Oyster,
and butterfly, something like
the
that.
Coronavirus in Me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she talks about how during difficult times, butterflies grow their, they protect themselves. And during the time when they're in protective mode, they're growing their wings. And that's sort of what we need to teach our children right now, is that, they can be okay through all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And that in and of itself is a life lesson that we've never had before.
No.
Or most of us have never had before.
You're right. I think that's so profound, that what we're learning in this difficult time. A few people have come on through. Hi, Sophia. Hey, guys. Thanks for coming through. We're just talking about children's online education versus their mental health, and how much we're realizing that their mental health has to win, right? Not every child has the same capability. Not every family is the same. My own kids are struggling with the fact that I'm home, but I'm not always accessible.
Yes.
Right? I'm seeing clients. I'm on online calls very often. And the other day, my son scrawled a note that said, "No more calls." I'm like, seriously, kid, come on. But
I know,
it's hard for them.
It's hard for them, and I think it's hard for us, because there's the guilt that wells up, right?
Yeah.
Because we feel stressed, and I've been through this too, working from home and doing my therapy virtually. I get sort of, little knocks on the door, and mommy, not another client.
Right?
It's mommy,
just like, seriously.
And so, yeah, so the guilt is just, it's hard. It's hard. Yep. But I think we need to have some compassion for ourselves, because as I had said earlier, what we are doing right now is impossible.
Right. Yeah. We've never done this before, and we need to give ourselves grace. I noticed that Dion says she's going to reach out to the teacher and have that discussion. I would encourage that, right? As much as you can, do what works for your family. Kudos to the ministry of our province. They are doing what they think is a responsible thing and
Yeah.
provide education. But we as parents, we as the adults in our home, we have to realize, like you said, Kristen, this is not normal. This is not another day at school. This isn't regular life. And so
No.
we really have to assess it, like you said, day by day. We have to see how our children are doing. When our children are unwell, we don't send them to school with good reason because they can't focus. And right now, you know, their mental health, it may not be well. One day it might be, and another day it might not be, right? This morning, my 5-year-old wasn't handling it very well. He said, Mommy, this isn't like school. And I said, yeah, you know, you're right. And I had to have a time and sit with him and just be with him about that because he's right. This isn't school. But there are other ways. Like I do my best. I draw with them. We go on nature walks and we look for things and how do we know it's spring and do you see a new flower coming up out of the ground? Like there's lots of things that we can still teach them that don't come out of books and won't come out of your computer, right?
Oh, absolutely. And that's, kind of what I'm sort of focusing on right now. They're growing in a whole different way, right?
Right. Yes.
Um, and there are some parents who are, you know, grocery store owners and work at
Mhm.
grocery stores. There are some parents that are, you know, working on the front lines in hospitals, nurses, doctors, and all they're seeing all day are, the results of like the devastating results of this virus.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
to go home and have the energy to, you know,
Mm.
work with their children or be with their children in any other way but just to read them a book or snuggle with them, I feel like is asking a lot and is too
Mm.
much. And then on top of that, there's a lot of children who are worried about their parents.
Of
Oh,
course,
there you
and with
are.
good reason,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. There's children that are worried about their parents, and there's children who are experiencing a lot of, yeah, anxiety symptoms. So, oh, can't hear you. Can you hear me? Can't hear you. Okay, so they can hear me, but they can't hear Roxanne. Okay, so there's something going on with your mic. Oh, the joys of virtual. Can you hear me, Roxanne? No, she can't hear me. Okay, so I'm gonna wrap up. I'm gonna wrap up for Roxanne. She's having technical difficulties, so it must be her microphone. So this happened to me a couple days ago with a client actually doing virtual sessions. So thank you so much, Roxanne, for having me on today, and thanks everybody for joining us. And we're hoping that, if you have any further questions, you can, get in touch with Roxanne. We have our clinic website. It's www.newmarketpsychotherapy.com, or you can go straight to Roxanne's Instagram page, as you are today. And if you have any other questions or comments, don't hesitate to contact either one of us. Okay, have a great night. Goodbye, everybody.